Hour, though, with the legal showdown between former President Donald Trump and the Justice Department. Trump's legal team is expected to ask a judge to appoint a so-called special master in the case. The independent official would review and possibly return evidence collected during the FBI search of Trump's home in Florida.
Also in Florida, the state's governor, Ron DeSantis, is up for re-election in November, and tomorrow, Democratic voters will choose the person who will face off against him. Let's bring in CBS News political director Fin Gomez for more on tomorrow's primaries. Fin, it's good to see you, my man. So let's talk about DeSantis. He's announced criminal charges against 20 Floridians for voter fraud. The state also enacted a series of new voting laws. How might those factors impact tomorrow's primaries, the midterms, and looking ahead to the 2024 election? What is the story behind these Floridians that he's going after?
Well, Vlad, to be honest, while he is running for governor, for re-election in the governor's race here in Florida, a lot of the Republicans that I've spoken to here in Florida and Democrats believe this is really about 2024. This is really a wink and a nod, if you will, to that Trump base, that MAGA base, that believes in the election denialism of 2020. And if former President Trump chooses not to run for whatever reason, there is that big void that DeSantis, a lot of people in the Republican Party believe that Ron DeSantis can fill. This is a candidate for re-election who's raised upwards of $160 million, which is just a whopping amount, Vlad, if you compare it to even the Democrats who are running, who have raised about $16 million combined. Also, there hasn't been a Democrat elected in this state for the governor's position since 1999, since Jeb Bush won that race. So it's been over 20 years.
20 votes is not a lot, and we don't even know who these people voted for, right? But that aside, now when we talk about the Democrats who are running, who's the front runner in the governor's race?
Well, that's a great question, Anne-Marie, because it's between Charlie Crist, Congressman Charlie Crist, the former Republican governor who became an independent, then a Democrat, and Nikki Fried, who is the state's agricultural commissioner. Now, for the most part, Charlie Crist, who was in the lead well in advance, for most of this race. However, recent polls show the race tightening. It's a lot closer. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top tomorrow. But again, this is a tough state to win in for Democrats statewide. It is, even though it was considered a purplish state, it really has become and trended more to the red side. It's become more of a Republican state. And this is also, of course, where two potential 2024 aspirants live. As I mentioned, Ron DeSantis, but also former President Donald Trump. Now, I just spoke to a source close to Donald Trump who believes that, that DeSantis could fill that void if Trump doesn't run. However, this source told me that he believes, and he speaks to Trump frequently, that he believes that he will jump into this race. Now, a lot of factors are to be considered, including the multiple criminal investigations that we talked about. But yeah, that is something to keep an eye on, that thread, that narrative between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. And again, there could be a possibility where the next Republican nominee for 2024 could come from Florida.
Fin, let me ask you about Florida Congresswoman Val Demings, who's expected to challenge Marco Rubio for his Senate seat in November. What are the polls looking like?
It's close, actually, which is surprising a lot of people. And there's just a poll that came out recently, University of Northern Florida, I believe, that showed that she was actually up by 4 points. It's still a statistical tie. However, Republicans here in Florida tell me that ultimately that Rubio will pull it off because of the trend that is happening in November, they say, where Republicans are more likely to win in places like here in Florida, which again has become much more of a red state than a purple state. But right now, Vlad, you're seeing a tight race, a tightening race, if you will, which is really surprising a lot of people, a lot of Florida political experts. However, Val Demings is a strong candidate. She has a law enforcement background. She's raised a ton of money. And this is also a race that the NRSC, the Republican campaign arm for those running for Senate, did not expect to spend a ton of money. But however, because of this, they could be spending a lot more money to boost Rubio against Demings. It's really becoming an interesting race and what was seen to be not too close.
So last week, Senator Mitch McConnell said something really interesting, that Republicans may not win back the Senate in 2022 because of a, quote, a lack, or rather because of, quote, candidate quality. Basically suggesting that some of the people that are rising to the surface with the help of the former president's endorsement may not be able to win a general election. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Well, really, his strategy, the former president's strategy, has not really been about who is best to win in November. Sometimes it's really a grudge list. And a lot of that framework for that grudge, the framework for his strategy for endorsements is frankly, if they believe in the election denialism, a lot of times that he fraudulently claims occurred in 2020, the 2020 presidential election, or somebody perhaps like for example, last week, in Wyoming with Liz Cheney, who voted to impeach President Trump following January 6th. He targeted her in a punitive backlash, and you see some of that. So it's not really strategy as you've seen in years before, in cycles before, where it's who's best to win in this purple state, who's best to win in this regional state, or state that's trending red. It's really about a grudge list. It stems from there, and that's how it permeates throughout the entire midterm landscape from Trump and the Republican side.
All right, Finn, it's always great talking to you. Thank you.
So good to see you guys.
Good to see you, Finn.